Starting. This hangout on air is live.
Hey!
As you people who are listening to the podcast version of this can't see it, but I'm wearing a Dr. Horrible shirt in honor of the times when I still liked Joss Whedon.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Let's see here. So I'm gonna.
No, I was gonna say I'm not wearing anything that exciting. Just a hoodie with no fandom on it.
I'm sorry. I missed the last thing you said because my my volume was off.
I've got a hoodie, but it has no fandom on it.
Oh,
it's actually my university hoodie, so
what?
Super comfy.
Fake geek girl.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so I'm going to start this off for our podcasters and our viewers, and I'm going to say I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to throw it to you to introduce yourself, and let's do that now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PaulTalks podcast, which is also a YouTube live show. I am Paul Roth at Pauladin on Twitter, and I'm joined today by my co-host.
I am Rowan from Rowan Ellis. I make videos on YouTube mainly about geeky social issues and feminism and queerness, often critiquing TV shows or films.
Fantastic. Ta-da. Hooray. And we are both members of the Geeky Social Issues Community here on YouTube.
Yep. That was a phrase that Franzi came up with for a tag video, I think. A little while, it feels like ages ago, but it probably was about like a month ago. And then if you guys feel like you're also part of that, come to the community. Come and be with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, Francie came up with it as a phrase to describe how she felt when she was doing the YouTube alphabet video that she did.
That's what it was.
Yeah, she got to the community category and thought, well, what kind of community am I a part of? And she just came up with that as a phrase. It's a good phrase. I totally feel like that as well.
Definitely.
We are already joined in the chats by probably Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello. I definitely know where the chat is.
So for the chats, you have to open up a separate window with the publicly viewable YouTube page. And then the chat will be where the comments usually are.
I'm assuming that's just on your chat. If I go to your channel, it will be there somewhere. There it
is. There you go.
Oh, I'm in the thumbnail. How exciting. Let's turn the volume off on that so it's not us talking to ourselves. There
yes.
we
go. In the Twitters, Becca Canote. Hi, Becca. She says that she wishes she could watch live, but we'll catch the video ASAP once it's done. So at some point, Becca will catch this.
Very awesome sauce.
And of course, Sarah is immediately starting off this live show, stirring up some controversy. Asking us about the new Avengers movie. I just watched it last night. I'm still angry. I'm more disappointed than angry.
You're like that parent who's like, Joss, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
You've done better in the past. I'm sure of it.
I can't work out whether it's just like nostalgia that makes some people feel that way. Where they're like, Joss used to be so good, but it's just nostalgia clouding our judgment.
I mean, we can compare literally the two Avengers movies. Remember how in the first Avengers movie, when Tony thought he was going into a battle and it might die, he wanted to contact the woman that he loved? And in this movie, he barely remembers her?
Yeah, I do remember that. I actually, like, literally, it's kind of funny. I've just finished editing a video that's probably going to be uploaded tonight about a very specific part of the Avengers movie. But I have so many feelings about all of it. Like, it was just so frustrating because they've introduced 4 new characters, right? There's like, this is going to be very, no spoilers. It's going to be very, this part. I mean, we may delve into spoilers, but I'm just going to say there are 4 characters who happen to be introduced who are pretty major players. And so I kind of get that they had to sideline some people out of the way, but it kind of turned into like, oh, we have 2 women in like a bajillion people cast. The ending gave me slight hope for the future of the Avengers because it was like, oh, hey, now there's not all just white people and now there's like more women and now so it's like this could be kind of interesting. But obviously that didn't actually happen within the movie until the last 30 seconds. So who knows?
Yeah, that is really, I will point out there are in fact 3 named women in the movie. One was a surprise.
They had like a weird like girlfriend off, right? Like the idea of like Pepper's better than Jane.
Oh, I don't mean that. I mean in regard to Hawkeye.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so there were 3 named women, but all 3 of them were. Scarlet Witch was treated pretty well. The other 2 were not treated well at all.
No, I was specifically, the video I'm doing is like specifically about Black Widow's, the reaction that people have had to Black Widow's romantic entanglement within the film.
Yeah.
Which I did not have a problem with the romantic entanglement, although, as has been noted by many people, there are some problematic things about particular conversations that happen between those characters.
I mean, just the premise was okay for me, but literally everything in the execution sucked. All of it.
Yeah, I think I probably tend to agree with that. It's one of those things that the more I think about it, like the more cerebral I get about it, the more I'm like, this is actually a really good idea. But then, and I kind of get away from the fact that like it actually happened. The idea came to an execution, and I don't think about how well the execution was done, because I'm like, that idea is so good. What a good concept.
Yes.
It did. I mean, like, I think it's one of those things where there are so many things in those movies and the way that they've done the Marvel Cinematic Universe that like keep me clawing me back in. So like just the humor and the way that they can take themselves seriously and then not take themselves seriously, like in the same breath, I generally really enjoy. I enjoy how well, for the most part, they seem to be at balancing different people's storylines within an ensemble cast and not having one main lead. Things like that. But yeah, sometimes it's sometimes the execution of that doesn't pay off as well as it could do.
I agree. I don't know, it's frustrating. We are joined in the chat by Cat in the Garden.
Awesome.
Cat, are you a new viewer? I don't recognize your name.
Neither do I. Stalking time. No, we'll do that.
Something that kind of frustrates me about these live shows is that this lovely chat happens on the sidebar, but then once the video is saved and available for people to review later on, all the chat stuff isn't there.
Yeah, that is something that frustrates me to no end. I would just want it all to be underneath, because sometimes people have little conversations that when you're doing live stuff you don't quite catch, and then you want to look at it later and see what people are like riffing off what you're saying in the side. Sort it out, YouTube. But to be honest, that's something that's technically to do with comments, so YouTube is obviously not going to do very well on that particular idea. Comments are something that's beyond them right now.
That's true. That is their Achilles heel. If the Achilles heel is the size of the entire body.
That would be an amazing creature that was just like a massive heat.
Just like a massive heat. We're also joined by a weirdo from Pluto. Weirdo from Pluto has joined us before. Hi.
Oh, hey.
So I've been joking on Twitter, kind of joking, kind of serious, about how you are rapidly going to surpass my number of subscribers, and I want that to happen because your channel is great, your vlogging is great.
Oh, you. What I'm hoping is that we're caught in a kind of continuous battle for the rest of our lives for dominance, where we just continue to like go up and up forever exponentially. Until the Earth explodes.
Well, possibly that could work, or eventually I could rename my channel into The Amazing Phil, and you could become Rowan is Not on Fire, and then we could collaborate.
Exactly. We could be in Japan right now. Who knows? It'll be great. It's very much like it's. I will pass you soon if we're going on the basis of like you don't get any more subscribers, but like my premise is that we just do this.
That would be nice. Although I don't know why exactly certain numbers happens for me, but every now and then I'll get to around a certain number and I'll just plateau there for months, and then it'll shoot up again. Like right now, I've been around 1,800 subscribers for like about 2 months, I think, around 2 months, and it goes up, and it goes down, it goes up, and it goes down. That's about it. Your numbers have been steadily climbing recently, so that's good.
It's so funny. Sometimes the bit like my videos just somehow, some of them are suddenly like, oh, by the way, here are 6,000 views. And then some of them are like, hey, here's 50 views. And I'm like, I don't know what YouTube's algorithm thinks going on here. Like, it's not even like, oh, there was one viral video. It's literally just like this amount of views and this amount of views. And we'll see what happens. So I have no, I don't even know. I know for a fact that one of them, if I try and work out whether people are going to watch it or not, a lot of it depends on whether or not Tumblr gets a hold of it. That's pretty much how I measure what's going to happen. I'm like, if a big name in a fandom on Tumblr sees something with like their character in the thumbnail, suddenly they're like, on it. We're on this. This is happening.
I don't know that I've ever made a video that specifically appealed to Tumblr fandoms. I might have, but I don't. Like, I've done some anti-Tumblr fandoms when I've called out some YouTubers. That has happened, and those videos do in fact get a lot of views.
They get a lot of angry eyes.
Oh yes, lots of angry eyes. Mostly I tend to blow up a little bit when I talk about something that is a topical, like a trending topic. That's kind of controversial, and that'll get me like a couple hundred views. There was something that I did recently where I got 1,000 views, and that was surprising to me, but that's rare. If I break 100 views, I'm pretty happy about it.
It's kind of like, I just find that whole thing really interesting. Like what people, like, this is such a weird YouTube nerdy thing to be thinking about, but the whole thing now where you can check your subscribers versus non-subscribers thing. Mm-hmm. Because I like mainly, if I'm thinking about what content I'm doing, I'm thinking about my subscribers. But like, I love you guys, but it turns out you're like this much of my views. Like, I do it all for you, but you're like this much. And then like these random non-subscribers who I'm like, how did you find this? Like, what were you searching that you appeared here and you decided to watch this? Are like all the rest of them. It's such a strange, I hadn't even thought about it before, but still, I'm not changing anything. I'm still just going to be like, so what do you guys want? If you reply to me, you get dibs.
Yeah, yes. Well, I feel bad about that because I definitely get ideas from my viewers when I ask them, what should I vlog about? But then I'll oftentimes not actually do that subject like 3 weeks. Like, I'll eventually get to it, but like I won't actually do it for like 3 weeks because I keep on coming up with more topical things that I want to do right now. And I vlog about that. Sorry, I have a lot of ideas.
Like, I feel like that works for you because a lot of your stuff, you're kind of like, here are my thoughts. It's in the moment, so I'm into it, but I've spent enough time planning that it's articulate. That's like where you are for me on your videos. It's like, I have passion about this, but it's organized passion. Here's my organized passion for you.
That that's how I like to be described, is just organized passion.
That's totally a sex tape right there.
Organized passion.
That's the worst sex tape name ever. Oh my god.
Although actually, like if you ever watched any of the like typical mainstream porn videos, like the short ones, that kind of describes them. They kind of are organized passion. Like there's no real passion there. That's like, let's do this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing, hitting all the porn tropes, and then we're done. That's basically,
just like critique the porn business. That's a whole other kettle of fish.
That would be a great one too. In the chats that I'm trying not to ignore, Weirdo from Pluto says something reminds them of Emma Blackery's newest video. Weirdo from Pluto, do you have a pronoun preference? Please let us know. And what reminds you of Emma Blackery's video? It's a complimentary, whatever that is.
Yes, it is. I love Emma Blackery.
We're joined by French Sappho, who says that the Achilles heel thing is just very visual.
That's true.
Cat in the Garden is a newish viewer. Okay, well, welcome to both of us. I'm glad you're commenting. You
guys don't have enough fringe. Oh my gosh, you have no idea. This is so strange to me because I had a fringe, like a Zoe Deschanel, but like twice as thick fringe for years. And that's how I see myself. And I haven't had that fringe in about 4 years, but I still think of myself as being that girl with a fringe. If I draw myself, I draw myself with a fringe. And it's so, it like pains me slightly that we don't have enough fringe to be either of them.
I mean, you'd have to have fringe for two people. So your hair will basically be covering your entire face.
Yeah, if I do this, if I just like take my ponytail, that's like I don't even know what that is. Pretty good. This is what they look like now, right? I'm sure they've cut their
Yes,
hair.
that's if your hair were darker, it would be uncanny.
That's my YouTube closet cosplay just there. Transform within seconds.
Well done. That is amazing. Sarah says that she found your channel through Tumblr. And French Sappho found Rowan browsing Agent Carter stuff on YouTube.
All about the Agent Carter.
Season
2! Season 2!
Seriously, I'll be so pissed if they don't do a season 2.
I'm just hoping that it's like already been confirmed. It's just gone under the radar. I just haven't heard it. It's all totally happening. Everything's beautiful.
Well, I mean, in terms of brand strategy, I can understand why they might not want to do another season of Agent Carter when they could do a different spinoff of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like they're talking about doing a Mockingbird and her guy spinoff.
Okay.
They're talking about doing that. So that would be like a contemporary spinoff running concurrent to Agent S.H.I.E.L.D., maybe taking turns. I don't know. I'm not sure what they would do. But that would give us more of a story about different characters. And that's kind of interesting. But, like, do Agent Carter too.
Yeah, like the things that I find interesting about it are probably the reasons why someone in a boardroom is being like, we can't continue this series, because it's like, hey, it doesn't have any superheroes in it, and it's like from a superhero franchise. It's like a period piece in a world where everything else is now modern. So it's all these things that I really love about it that I feel like are probably things that people are using to argue it should be cancelled, which just makes me slightly sad. But I'm English, so we have to like period pieces. That's like in our blood. That's how we roll.
I've noticed that. I'm actually a little bit surprised that there hasn't been a period piece season of the Great British Bake Off. You would think that would be perfect.
Yeah, oh my gosh, you guys don't even know. We've just had a show where the entire premise of the show is that they basically take a family, an ordinary family, and they get them to spend a week in each decade of the 20th century. And they have to basically eat the food from that decade. And they have an amazing food historian who talks about like how like women's rights has changed the way that food is prepared in the home over the last 100 years, how the wars changed food, how like different social issues and standards of various different things in society have changed how the family eats. It was so like, I know that was a total joke on your part, but genuinely they did that show. They did like a period piece. They dressed up in the clothes. They ate the food. They had to like, the man had to go off and pretend to do the job for a while. It was genius. That was actually Sue Perkins who presents the Great British Bake Off.
I love Sue Perkins.
She's amazing. She had a thing with a guy called Giles, not a thing, she's a lesbian. She had like a professional thing with a guy called Giles called the Supersizers, where they did a very similar thing and they just went through history and just ate the food from the particular periods of history, all dressed up, doing like bad puns from that decade or that century. It was glorious. We take our food and our history seriously, apparently.
That is fantastic. Wow. That was a joke on my part, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I mean, history and baking, that's history. If it could be somehow like a history of baking and tea, that would be everything I know about Britain. That would be it.
All combined. I feel like because I kind of feel like we get more British stuff, we get more American stuff in Britain, TV-wise, than we export over to you. Like because we get some stuff from you guys, which is like the trashiest shows ever, but which are amazing. Like my favorite show ever, and one which I'm pretty much basing my trip to America on, is Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives. Which is like
the Guy Fieri show?
Yes, I literally, all I want to do when I go to these different cities, I'm like, yeah, sure, monuments, museums, but take me to like the restaurants that he visited in that show in this particular town. That's all I want to do.
That's amazing. What a horrible legacy for us to have.
Yeah, that's like, it's just this amazing show. I'm really scared to look up what he looks like now, because I feel like he's probably got different hair and like it's completely changed and it's going to ruin the magic for me. I'm like, I always want to remember you with your blonde tips, guy. That's how I see you.
I think of him as a blonde tips guy as well. Weirdo from Pluto responded to say she prefers she/her pronouns. Thank you for letting me know. And she was talking about how Emma Blackberry calls out the comments section for sucking. Yeah,
that's true. I listened to her Google Plus rants ukulele song the other day, and it just took me back to that time that's still happening now.
That's how I discovered her, was the Fuck You Google Plus. That was awesome. It was a great song.
I think that was probably how I discovered her as well, actually.
What a claim to fame.
That's true.
I need to learn how to play ukulele and then curse while playing it. That'll give you some viewers.
That's the magic formula. That and a fringe.
And yeah, well, I mean, how would it be if I just like grew out a fringe and nothing else? Just a fringe?
That would be
like
something.
Nothing.
That would be something.
It reminds me of how, like, in the 80s they envisioned future punk. Future punk's that thing with like no hair and then like a little fringe and that's it. Maybe like spikes in the middle. I don't know.
Whereas now it's like almost the opposite, right? It's like you do the undercut, which is like the tiny bit of shave, and then you have the rest of the hair.
Yes.
They were so close and yet so far in their predictions.
Some people do like the faux hawk. It's kind of a regional thing. But yeah, I've actually thought that I'd be tired of seeing undercuts on everybody by now, but I still love it. I still think it's a great cut.
I'm such a scaredy cat. This hair, it's never had anything interesting happen to it. I've never dyed it. I've never cut it weirdly. It's just, but I know if I shave that, I'd be like, oh no, because when it starts to grow out and it's like this long and the rest of your hair's like this long, and I feel like it would just look really strange. I don't have the guts to do it. I don't even have the guts to dye my hair. When I think about dyeing my hair, I'm like, Rowan, just dye it. Just dye the ends when it's really long so you can just cut them off and nothing will change. So I'm like the worst person for fun hairstyles.
Oh no. I mean, I can't advise you. It would be like, what can I tell you about hair? Nothing. Sarah dropped a spoiler in the chat. Shame on you, Sarah. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to talk about it. Let's see here. Bree May says that as soon as she tuned in, the first thing she heard was porn. What is happening? Hey, live shows. That's how it goes.
That's how we roll.
That's right.
Weirdo from Pluto saying about how online shows, like Netflix shows, are kind of better than TV shows at the moment.
Yeah.
I feel like they possibly have less interference from the networks, maybe.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like there was Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which got really, really popular, but I had lots of problems with that. There was Daredevil was pretty great.
I still haven't done it. I was like, I know it's finished now because I was waiting for people to finish it so they could tell me if something like it ruined itself at the end, like they killed someone who shouldn't have been killed or something bad happened. But if people are saying are recommending that I do it, I'm gonna be all over that.
All right, well, people in the chat, if you recommend that Rowan watch Daredevil, let her know. I'd give it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 rating. It's good, but there's a lot of violence. The female characters and the people of color, there's a lot of diversity, but they're not really treated all that well, I guess.
Dare I ask if Marvel has introduced through Daredevil its first queer character?
Not that I recall.
Oh, Marvel, how many films must you do before that happens? How many? I kind of talked about that before, but I think it's just it's just like the backlash, the back end of the idea of like, oh, queer people aren't family friendly, and Marvel's like the family friendly version of the superhero kind of genre, whereas DC's like the gritty version. So they feel like I kind of feel
it's
like
not like DC has queer characters on broadcast shows or films.
That's also true. To be fair, that's also true. But I think, yeah, this idea of like, oh, it's not a family friendly thing to have. So hopefully it'll happen soon. But
I mean, the fact that we're talking about the superhero shows where, yes, it looks like reality, but it is obviously not reality.
Yep, that's
They're
true.
afraid of including queer characters who are a huge part of reality in shows where people are brutalized. Like, horrific things happen in Daredevil. Even in Superman. Superman is supposed to be the Boy Scout of the DC universe. He snaps a guy's neck. And And DC is afraid of including queer characters in its mainstream. Come on. Come on.
Every time I think about it, it reminds me, this is going to be the lame, I'm revealing myself how lame I am. It reminds me of what I want to happen is that there's like finally a queer character, and I get to, in my head, reenact the final scene from the Cinderella story with Hilary Duff, where she's like, waiting for you is like waiting for the rain in this drought, like bitter and disappointing. And then it rains at the end and their love is beautiful. It's like, that's me and the queer character. I'm going to be like, waiting for you. Queer character is like waiting for rain in a drought. And then they'll appear and it will start raining and we'll kiss in the rain. That's like what's going to happen in my head when it eventually happens.
It's a very involved fantasy. I think that you've devoted a little bit of time to that.
Yeah, that's how desperate we are. Like, it's like you can send that clip to Marvel, and they're going to be like, "Okay, people need this. This is something that people need." If this girl has gone that into it.
We're also joined in the chat by Kat Young. Hi, Kat. A frequent viewer. Rowan, I need to introduce you to Guy's Grocery Games.
Yes.
Apparently, that's a thing. Oh, geez.
Wait, I totally think I've already watched this. I feel like it's like a weird version. It's him and it's like supermarkets. Did you have Supermarket Sweep in the US?
I know about it. I think we did. Yeah, I think we did.
It's basically what happens when you just run around a supermarket trying to grab as many things as possible in as short a possible time. And then I think they possibly had to cook with them, or it was really boring and they didn't cook. They just had to buy stuff for a certain amount of money. And so in the UK, whenever you like have to go to a supermarket and go really fast, everyone just calls it like doing the supermarket sweep. Yeah. They're like, "You've got a supermarket sweep here. Go, go, go." Which is great.
Well, if Guy Fieri's new show is like that, then, I mean, it's got a built-in audience.
It's the kind of thing that you like almost guilty pleasure want to do in a supermarket, like just sprint down the aisles and like grab everything and shove it in the like trolley, and someone else has to pay for it. And then you get to like cook really bad food with it. It's like like a weird thing that I kind of want to do. I used to work in a 24-hour supermarket, and one of the best things ever was seeing people come in like in the middle of the night. We actually had some flats, people lived above the supermarket, and so they made a rule that no one was allowed to come in their pajamas, because people would just come at like 3 o'clock in the morning and like run around and get popcorn and stuff for a movie night in the middle of the night in their pajamas from upstairs in their
What's wrong with that?
I know, it was amazing. I was like, don't ruin their fun. This is like, they need this. They live above a supermarket. Like, they need some fun in their lives. I'm sad and I just work here. They have to live above this.
I mean, when I went to college, there were 2 supermarkets near us. One of them was really close, and lots of kids from campus would go like the 5 minutes to that supermarket in their pajamas at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not even above. That's a 5-minute walk away.
That's what you do. It's like, we're in college. This is our life now.
Exactly right.
Do the pajamas.
We're also joined in the chat by Articulations.
Oh,
Hi, Articulations.
my gosh. You guys, if you guys haven't seen Articulations channel now, you need to go and see, because it's like, I've kind of weirdly found a few of them now, but it's like an art channel which has about like art history and theories of art, and like why art costs particular money, and like what is art and modern art, and like the difference between naturalism and realism, and like lots of cool art stuff basically. So, and it's always really frustrating when I tell people about them, because you can search Articulations on YouTube, but their channel doesn't come up for some reason. So if you're in the chat now, now's your chance. Click on that username.
Yeah, I clicked on their username now, and I can see that their channel is not a custom. Their channel is youtube.com/articulations plural vlog VLOG. So Articulations vlog is how you get to that channel.
Oh my gosh, there's so many comments. You guys.
There's so many comments, which is great. Let's see here. Lots of talking about undercuts. We all like undercuts. Yes, ScarJo does look amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I just realized that she has that hair now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure she purposefully chose a haircut very different from the Black Widow's, because she doesn't get to do that.
That's true.
Let's see here.
Undercuts.
Sarah can rock the faux hawk, but doesn't usually take the time to do it.
Wait.
Jesse Springer has joined us. Hi, Jesse Springer.
Hey. I'm like, so many comments everywhere. Who is this person who's just said about being bisexual? Oh, Sarah said, isn't Steve Rogers canonically bisexual? It's one of those things where I'm like, this is fandom, but I feel like fandom is fandom so hard, it feels like it's canon.
Yeah, if Steve Rogers is canonically bisexual, it happened after I stopped reading the comics. It definitely was not the case as of like a decade and a half ago.
There's like, as someone who was in the Harry Potter fandom, there were so many things in that fandom that I genuinely believed were from the books until I reread the books and I was like, they never say this. Why have we assumed this is a thing that happened? Like the fact, like Severus Snape being Draco's godfather was just something that was in every Harry Potter fan fiction and it's nowhere in the books at all. And
yeah,
I'm like, that's
news to me.
That's so strange. And there's one thing that was only ever in one fan fiction, but I mentioned it to someone and they looked at me like I was crazy and I realized it's just this one random made up thing from a fan fiction that I just implanted into my brain that it was real. I mean, real in the terms of it being in Harry Potter rather than like in the real world of magic, which was that it was something really stupid like magician is the word that wizards use for like janitors or like electricians or people who work in that kind of industry.
Oh.
And I mentioned it to someone like it was totally factual part of like J.K. Rowling had said it herself. And they looked at me like I was crazy and it took a few seconds and I was like, what have I just done? And I had to explain to her that I knew it from fan fiction. And she was kind of like, what is fan fiction? I was like, let's just stop this conversation right now. This can't end well for any of us.
Yes. Jesse points out in the chat that she forgot that Neville and Luna don't actually get together at the end of Harry Potter because the fandom just ignored that fact and they made it happen.
And then it was like in the films. That's the thing that happened. The thing that, because I am totally for Luna and Neville getting together, the one thing
I actually feel like Luna should have gotten together with Harry. I'm always disappointed that it didn't happen.
They were really like I felt them even more in the films than I did in the books. But the one thing that I kind of really liked from the fact that Luna ended up with the guy from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them's grandson, whose name escapes me. I know their children were Lorcan and Lysander, but I've totally blanked on his name. I know, I love how I remember their twins' names. No, the only reason why was because he's described in a very sort of like racially ambiguous way as swarthy in the books, which means there is a strong chance that his grandfather, the protagonist of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, is a person of color. It's not going to happen, but it's canonically in the books. So I'm really, really hoping.
I mean, I feel like J.K. Rowling is the sort of author who uses swarthy as a nice way of saying he looks Greek.
Quite possibly. But like that's what I'm holding on to in my heart. Even though they're now like, all these white people are rumored for this position. And I'm like, stop it now.
I'm so tired of white people getting all the freaking casting, It's just, like it actually didn't occur to me that Hermione was described the way that she's described in the books and that Emma Watson doesn't look at all like that. So when I saw the fan art of Hermione as a black girl, I thought that was fantastic. I was like, yes, why didn't we do that?
I got into so many online arguments about that where people were like, but she's not. And I'm like, but her skin is never described. And then as like anything other than things like her blushing. And then you clearly knew how white these people were because they were like, yeah, but it says this, Hermione blushed. And I'm like, do you think white people blush? Like, where did this come from? So yeah, the whole thing was so bizarre. It just says she has like good, like Harry as well. It just says he has good skin. Like, and I personally am a big fan of the Harry as a person of color, like headcanon, just because it has like a whole new dynamic to why the Dursleys dislike James. And adds a whole like racial element to this idea of him not being good enough and him being like that man who was like unemployed and who was like a bit of a kind of gangster almost that they were really against. It has a very kind of adds an interesting layer for me that would be something that would happen, because all we know is he has unruly black hair, he has good skin, and there is something going on with his father that this very kind of middle class white family don't like.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that.
That's a good point. I like that a lot. The thing is, I like that as a way of taking over the canon and making it your own. But I have this tendency to think that even the unspoken canon of a franchise, it should be something that fits to what an author would write. So J.K. Rowling doesn't strike me as someone who ever thinks of people of color, frankly. She strikes me as someone who just never thinks of people of color. So because of that, not because of anything in the books, it's hard for me to picture her creating a character in her head who wasn't white. If she were like Trevor Noah, if Trevor Noah had written the Harry Potter series, I would think if nobody was there, it would be white.
That's true. That's true. I'm like, this is, again, revealing how lame I am. I did the Harry Potter module at Durham University. I studied Harry Potter at university. And yeah, we discuss this kind of stuff quite a lot, because it's actually like, even because I feel like it's got very, very liberal fan base. I think that people tend to think of Harry Potter as being quite a liberal book. And especially because it was like banned for this whole witchcraft drama in some very Christian American states. But it is like a very conservative set of books.
It's a very conservative book.
Like,
I mean, it's more liberal than a conservative Christian, but that's not very liberal.
Yeah, it's very conservative in the terms, it's British conservative, let's say that. It's very like no sex happens, no sexual feelings happen. Like even when sexual feelings happen, it's in the guise of like love potions as teenagers. It's very kind of, yeah, almost like not asexual in that kind of way, but it's very kind of like non-sexual. Plus there's like a lot of, it's very much in this kind of weird eraless 1950s England. It's kind of like there's so many things in it that are just conservative with a small c in a really interesting way, which I like completely had blanked on just because I was part of the very liberal fandom for so long, where it was a majority of fan fiction that was very heavily slash fiction. It was all this kind of stuff. And then it wasn't until you go back and you're like, oh yeah, like Dumbledore wasn't out until after the books were finished and there's no kind of sexual connotations in it. And it's very much like a white cast and there's no queer character. Like it's very, very kind of conservative thing. But I also think it's a product of its time, because writing back then, she couldn't have had a queer character in those books. She couldn't.
You mentioned that to me before, I think in a Twitter conversation about how there's restrictions on what she was able to get away with publishing in the UK. And I didn't realize that, because we never had those restrictions in my lifetime in the United States.
It sucked. It was like, it was kind of crazy, right? Because we had this thing called, for people who don't know, there was this thing called Section 28 in the UK, which was put under by Margaret Thatcher's government, which basically said that you were not allowed to discuss in schools homosexuality as a, and I quote here from the section, a pretended family relationship. And
son of a bitch.
Yeah, what happened was all these teachers were like, I'm going to get fired if I talk about this. So they didn't talk about it. The training that they went through never talked about it. And so it didn't just affect the time that it was around, because it finished in the early 2000s. It was repealed in the early 2000s. It like affected afterwards, because all these teachers who had been trained up until early 2000s had no idea how to talk to people about sexuality, had no idea how to challenge language, had no idea what to do if a kid was queer, they had no clue. And so she was very much writing in this climate where schools weren't allowed to talk about it, where kids were not like told about it, where there was no information about it, where it was just, yeah, very much a kind of weirdly hush-hush situation. It wasn't until like way after I left that it became something that actually now it's amazingly, it's part of the school inspections that we have. Nationally, we have this inspection service called Ofsted that has to go into every single school and judge how well they're doing on various things. And one of the things is how well they deal with queer students, basically. How good they are at challenging homophobia, how good they are at having it in their syllabus. Like that's something that the like impartial thing that goes around every school has to make sure schools have before they can be seen as excellent schools, which is kind of awesome. But it's like a big turnaround to how it used to be.
That's very cool. That's very interesting. Now, but what about wasn't there a really popular show, Skins, in the UK? Didn't that like cover every topic?
Oh yeah, Skins was like a crazy show. It like recycled its entire cast every 2 seasons.
Right.
And it did that 3 times.
Which I mean makes sense because there's student age, and they just keep on growing.
But it was crazy. They like basically had their writing staff's average age was like 20. It was like people were writing this when they were 16. There were people coming in who were like 16 who were like writing whole episodes themselves. There was it was great. They really, I think they realized how popular gay characters are with young people, and so they very much were on that. I think they had the main they had like a main central character in each of the seasons, and in their final season they had a character who was queer. They were completely unlabeled in terms of their sexuality. When asked whether they fancied boys or girls, they were like, I fancy people. And
fantastic.
They also were very genderqueer in their presentation for most of the seasons. They ended up presenting more feminine towards the end of the seasons, but for the first season at least, it was very much like the presentation of a kind of traditional gay man or a sort of very butch woman within the same body, which weirdly was the actress is an actress called Dakota Blue Richards who played Lyra in the terrible Golden Compass film.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
So she ended up, and she was amazing. Like I loved her character in that, and there was a lot of hints at her having a relationship with this other girl, and it was kind of this kind of weird unrequited thing that didn't quite happen. But it was the Skins thing was really interesting because I think it definitely pushed boundaries in British TV at the same time as like YA fiction in the UK was really pushing itself. So we had like the Bunker Diaries and all this stuff that was like very messed up things in YA that suddenly everyone in the publishing was like, oh, we can totally like have kids talk about these like really dark subjects that some of them are probably going through. This is kind of okay to publish. So they kind of almost became like the post-Potter thing was like the Skins era almost for youth culture in the UK.
That's excellent. I never got into Skins because like I felt I was already so old at that point when Skins came out. But I thought it'd be kind of creeper of me to get into that show. Like I don't mind watching kids shows. I don't mind watching or reading YA fiction. But when it's a show like Skins, it's about the interpersonal relations at that age level. I should not be watching that attentively. Is how I felt.
It's like there are some amazing moments in that show. Like when I think back to people who were in that show and they've got like Oscar nominations, and it's like Nicholas Hoult was kind of the main first guy, and there's this one scene where there's like one of my favorite scenes. There's like 2 scenes which I just think are absolute genius, and I have no idea who wrote them, but I think it's incredible. Oh, bless you, Paul.
Pardon me.
One of them is a scene where this boy's mum. He lives with his mum. His mum disappears, leaves him a load of money. He throws this massive house party, and it's very much like it could have just been like, he throws the party, he's so crazy. But it kind of very much turns into him like going upstairs to get the money to pay for the pizza. And it turns out all of his mum's bedroom is completely empty and she's left. And he like realizes, and he has a bit of a breakdown and climbs inside her wardrobe and sits on the floor. And then 2 of his friends come in, and he tries to like close the door of the cupboard so they won't see him be upset. But it ends up with them coming in the room, and the cupboard just falls on its side, and he sort of emerges from the cupboard, like breaks the wood and comes out. And it's just such a funny scene. And it's like they do the switch around so well that the guys are like, oh, did you kind of know what's going on with your mum? And he the guy says in this really like earnest voice, which is like, you can tell his heart's breaking, where he just goes, oh yeah, she left. And then like it's trying to act like it's nothing. And it's just these little moments like that where it's like really hysterically funny, but also really like horrifically sad at the same time, that just made it this show that was like not any kind of polished like HBO type show that pushes boundaries, but it was very like a raw show that was just such a had like the last season, I don't think had a single straight white male in it, that last season. in the
Good.
cast. It was great. It was just like, hey, all the people of color, all the queer characters, let's do this.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Maybe I should watch it after all. Something I did get into though, not really related, but just like again representing a diverse cast of lots of different, well, not too many different identities, but a couple of different orientations. Was Misfits? Did you watch Misfits?
I loved Misfits. I
didn't like the last season. I didn't like this last season, but
I didn't see the last season.
Mm.
I think I pretty much stopped when the original lot were gone. Basically.
Oh yeah. Well, my friend B just discovered Ewan Rowan.
Yeah.
How he pronounces his name, and immediately fell in love with him. I said you should watch Misfits first couple seasons because he was fantastic in that.
He is so. I was lucky enough to see him when he was in Spring Awakening in London.
Oh.
Because Spring Awakening in London lasted for no time. Like, it got cancelled really early, so they only did not a lot of performances. But I was lucky enough to go and see that, and he was amazing in it. He was just so good, and he plays the like awkward loner so well. Bless him. It's really funny though, because I know a lot of people know him now from Game of Thrones.
Oh, yes, I heard about that.
He does not play a particularly pleasant character. Pretty much all he does is torture people.
Wow.
That's literally it. So that's kind of an interesting one. There's like... No, go for it.
I have a tendency... There are lots of great genre shows and storylines, actually, that I know about that people have recommended to me. But I don't want to be stressed out when I'm enjoying my fiction, basically. Like, there's a level of stress I can handle, but when it's like just like oppressively torturous or violent or sexually violating, I don't want that in my fiction. I know enough about that in real life.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So for that reason, I have not watched Game of Thrones.
No, that's a lot of stress.
Yeah, I mean, great dragon lady. I hear there's lots of boobs and other types of nudity, but that isn't really worth it for me to watch all the torture and I think rape scenes. No, thank you. No, thank you.
No, not good. Lots of boobs, not so much peen.
I heard. I mean, even Anna Kendrick is on board the HBO Show Us Some Penis campaign.
There was it's really funny. There was a show like a British show called Glue, which I absolutely fell in love with. It really amused me because I'm pretty sure the only nudity they had was full frontal penises. It was great. It was so like it's like one of the first shots is this guy naked running through a field, and I was literally like completely did a double take because I was like, that's a thing I don't see every day, like or ever on TV. That's a thing that doesn't happen. And it was so funny because it was just such a weirdly non-sexual scene because it was literally just him like running through a field, climbing up a ladder, and then jumping into a grain silo, and that was like the scene of him naked. It was so bizarre. But there was kind of sexual scenes, but they were very much of the not gratuitous kind. They were like weirdly, kind of interestingly, intimately artiness. It was a good show. It was kind of, I have a feeling that they won't get a second season, but it was like a murder mystery that solved itself by the end of the season. So I think it was one of those British shows that was never meant to run any longer than a season.
Well, but, I mean, doesn't that also describe Broadchurch? Broadchurch was also solved within the first season, but they got another one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, and it's one of those things that everyone has seen, and I just haven't seen it, and I feel like it's one of those shows again that I want to wait until it's done, and then have someone tell me only watch season 1, stop at this episode. Like now I have to do to everyone who watches How I Met Your Mother. I have to tell them the exact point at which they turn off their televisions, which me and my brother do now. If we watch the episode, the finale episode, we're like, and off. That's the end of the show. That's how it ends. Everything happened.
I like to end the How I Met Your Mother finale with the yellow umbrella rain scene, and then immediately go to Avengers and say, "Oh, that's what happened to Robin." That's fantastic.
Exactly.
We're joined in the chat by Emily Eaton. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Emily.
Let's see here. Emily
shouted that as if she could hear me.
If you shout it loud enough, You don't have to type it into the chat, so it works out. And we've been tweeted a couple of times by Francie, and I just got tweeted by Emily Hatfield. Emily Hatfield says that she wishes she could watch the stream, but she's working Frappuccino happy hour. I'm so sorry, Emily. If you watch this video later.
Drinking Frappuccino happy hour.
Drinking Frappuccino happy hour is probably fun, but working it sounds like it sucks every time.
I'm the really annoying person who doesn't like coffee, so I'll just be like, can you give it to me with all the goodness, but with no coffee? And they're like, yeah, all right, here's your like cookie thing with no caffeine in it, you weirdo.
I am not a huge coffee drinker. I'm not a huge coffee drinker. I like that flavor of coffee. I don't know. When I go into a coffee shop, I'll generally be that person who annoyingly orders like a soy chai latte. That's my go-to drink. Soy chai. That's me. Let's see here.
It's like a dishonor of my family that I don't do tea either. So yeah, because not only am I British, but my parents, my dad's family's from Yorkshire, so what? I should definitely be doing tea. The only time I make myself...
Bro, do you even British, bro?
I don't. Look at this. I'm basically American. What's happening? No, the only time, this is like the lamest thing in the world, right? The only time I do tea is to do like the British ritual of biscuit dunking. So it's very difficult for me to eat biscuits that are meant to be dunked in tea, like digestives and rich tea biscuits, if I don't have the tea. So I would literally make myself tea just as a way of like heating and soaking biscuits, and then the tea, and then I'll throw the tea away. It's like, that's the only I'm the worst. That's my like weird habits I have.
That's a pretty weird habit. I'm gonna this is not meant to be confrontational, but I'm going to point out to you that you have used the word lame a couple of times here, and I kind of wish that you would not. I'm
trying to be better at that. Yeah. I will endeavor still to not use it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. For me, whenever I come to a point where I would, as a teenager, use that word, I now try to make myself say something like weak or silly or fake, one of those things, instead of that word.
I need to get like another one that I do automatically to put it in its place.
It's tough. It's tough to change your mindset, but I would have felt bad if I hadn't brought it up. Francie in the Twitter suggests, if you had all the resources for a TV show, what would it look like? Pitch it. Rowan, TV show.
The only time I've ever pitched a TV show was on LiveJournal, very like years ago, it was like a challenge thing where someone had to give you an idea for a TV show, and you had to like find the casting for it, find out they could only give you like the title of the show, and the title that I got from my friend was All Bark No Bite, and I decided it was going to be a fly on the wall documentary series about police dogs, like training police dogs. And it was really funny because I did it before Andrew Garfield had like been in anything. I think I'd seen him in something in the theatre, and he was like one of my main characters was him, and the other one was Lenora Critchlow from Being Human.
Being Human.
And they were both like the police people, and then one of the dogs was voiced by David Mitchell.
Yes.
He was like the main dog. He was like this really inept sniffer dog. And I think Andrew Garfield's dad was played by like Michael Ball or something. He was like the police chief. I don't even know what happened. It was like the weirdest thing. And it was just about them kind of having doing the training and being like a really weird fly on the wall documentary thing, which now has had like so many shows of fly on the wall, spoof fly on the wall documentaries, like from Modern Family onwards. So now it feels like this just the weirdest thing to have suggested back in the day. But now I'd just be like, everyone's magical, everyone's diverse, everyone's having fun. I bring back witches. I want modern witches in London, boiling potions in teapots and being queer together, which is basically what my work in progress novel is, but I want it in TV form as well, so I can see their faces.
That's brilliant. Wow. It's funny that it's funny that the name of that show was All Bark and No Bite, because the first thing I thought of for pitching a show would be that it would be like it'd be like set in a world similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where there are superhero characters, but most characters are not. And it would be Pizza Dog. It would be Hawkeye's Pizza Dog type character. Do you know about Pizza Dog from the comic books?
No, but I want to so badly now.
Okay. So one of the most recent lines of Hawkeye comic books has Clint Barton and also Kate Bishop, and they both have the name that is the code name of Hawkeye, because they're both archers. He trains her a bit. She's like his prodigy. But Hawkeye also has a dog, and his dog occasionally will get to be a part of the plot, and you'll see things from the dog's point of view. And he will, like, the dog sees things in limited colors and associates people with smells, and the storyline is told from the dog's point of view. There was like one issue that was entirely that, and it was fantastic. So I thought it'd be great if we had, like, not a talking dog, but like maybe a dog is secretly super in some fashion, and people don't know because it doesn't talk, and it just happens to be around the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you get to see the entire, like, the events of things from the dog's point of view. So, like, you'd see, like, the collapse of New York from the Chitauri invasion from the point of view of a dog who's, like, avoiding things and, like cursing at the sky. Why are you humans doing this shit to me? And stuff like that. I think that would be hilarious.
That would be, like, the most amazing, like, spoof web series to do, to just, like, spoof various films from the point of view of a dog, where you just, like, get the camera at dog level and just have them experience these random films where, like, the dog, especially the films that have the token dog, like Independence Day or like Day After Tomorrow, where it's just like the dog's experience is just like, Master has locked me in a cupboard. I'm unsure why we're in here, but I trust him. Like, as the guy's like, no, the zombies are getting in, protect the dog. The dog's like, we're having fun, aren't we having fun?
I think that would be great. I think it would also be good if anytime you had a dog that was hidden from the viewer in the main canon, whatever that is, in this web series version or this TV series version that's dog focused, the dog actually goes from that place and runs off and has an adventure, and then it comes back to that place to be uncovered when the humans open up the door again. Like, oh, I'm sorry that I had you locked in this closet for 3 episodes, but unbeknownst to you, the dog's been off having adventures, like saving lives, following Bruce Banner because he keeps on dropping stuff. You know, stuff like that. I think that'd be hilarious.
That, like, it just reminds me of that episode of Community where Abed delivers a baby in the background of the...
Yeah, I love that episode.
Oh, it's so good. Like, my favorite ever sketch from this radio show, the John Finnemore Souvenir Program, John Finnemore's the writer and star of Cabin Fever, which was the radio show that Benedict Cumberbatch sort of, I think, started on, but he's kind of in it. It's great. It's like a comedy show about a really, really cheap airline, and it has like 4 main characters or something. And John Finnemore is like one of the writers, and he's hilarious. And he does a sketch show called The Souvenir Program, and it's genius and it's so funny. But one of my favorite sketches from it is you obviously, because it's on the radio, you don't see it, but you essentially realize through the sketch that he's a dog. And then you realize that he's a dog who works at an airport as a sniffer dog, because all he says is things like, oh, is this a man that we're going to be happy about seeing, Master? Is this a man? Oh, has a man got the happy smell in his bag? Oh, he does! Oh, Master, we should definitely take this man to the fun room! Oh, Master, this is so cool! It's like the weirdest thing, but he just gets so excited about this, and you like don't realize until right at the end that it's a dog who's just like apparently found cocaine in this poor man's bag as he's gone through airport security. And he's about to be hauled up. It's like the weirdest thing, but it just totally reminded me, like, from the dog's point of view, it's like a totally different story.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, that's so good. French Sappho in the chats approves of queer witches in London using a kettle as a potion making device.
That's my aesthetic in the book.
That's a good one. In the chat, Bree May asks, what is the most recent big life lesson that you've learned? Big life lesson. That's a deep question, heavy question.
So deep, Bree. I'm not entirely sure. I'm being a lot less, you're
not learning anymore, you've just stopped learning.
Yeah, I don't learn anymore. I've reached the peak of learning. No, I am. I think, like, when I first started working, and my dad, who's self-employed, was very into being all like, oh, don't undersell yourself, don't do stuff for free, don't, like, all this kind of stuff. And I think I was like, Dad, you don't understand. The world's a cruel place, Dad, for a gal like me. I can't be working for monies all the time. Sometimes I have to give it away for free, except less old town Bugsy Malone. But like now, like knowing your worth in this capitalist society, Brie, that's my life lesson. Just because spending time, like, it's weird because I work as a tutor and it's a very like isolated thing, and you get a lot of your like knowledge of the industry from like almost like whispers and secrets around corners, just because you don't spend a lot of time with people. Whereas like if you work in an office, you kind of understand the work environment and you understand people and you understand what the pay's like and all this kind of stuff. And so it's really strange for me that where I've ended up now, knowing what I can demand of people and knowing like professionally what I should be doing and what I can be doing is really different to when I started. So it's just like, I think when I'm thinking about jobs and because this is like my life right now, it's like job applications is like not being really worried about, oh, I don't know this one thing yet. I can't apply for this job because they like say that one of their desirable skills is this and I don't quite know it well enough yet. Like I feel like going for it in like all places in life, but especially at the moment, that kind of very stereotypically female thing to do, which they kind of did a lot of studies on because they realized how bad application forms are in terms of recruiting women. Women tend to only apply for jobs where they can fulfill 100% of all the requirements in a job specification, whereas men are hugely more likely to go for it even if they don't have any of the desired requirements. They're much more likely to be like, I'll do it because they'll like my like ballsy attitude. Whereas, and it kind of works, right? Because the people who are already working at the company are most likely going to be men, and they'll be like, I like that guy's ballsy attitude. Whereas a lot of like me at least, or a lot of women apparently tend to be like, oh, I'm not going to waste their time by applying for a job that they don't think I can do. They wouldn't have written this on the application if they didn't think it was necessary. And so I'm kind of trying to be more like masculine in my way of doing things, like grabbing life, doing all that kind of stuff. Is that a life lesson I've learned? I don't know, maybe.
I think it's a good life lesson if it is, and I mean it's certainly a valid one. I've seen it myself. I've seen it myself in the people who've applied to work in my company. Is that the guys who apply, I will go into an interview and think they're only going to have like 50% of the skills they claim to have, but the women who apply will probably have 110% of the skills that they claim to have because they undersell themselves every time.
Yeah,
it's definitely a real thing, and I think that it's in addition to that self-evaluation that you're talking about, women thinking they have to have 100% of the skills before they apply. It's also a matter of our society's teaching us that men can get away with whatever the shit they want to do, and women can't get away with anything. That's another societal lesson that reinforces that approach to job applications. Men think that they can lie, try to do something from their lie, and even if it doesn't work out, they won't get punished for it. Women think that if they don't do everything exactly right, following some ephemeral, invisible rules, they'll get punished because society screws over women constantly, basically.
Yeah. It was like one of the hardest things during my master's was the fact that they awarded they did percentages for essays and stuff, but they just didn't care about it at all. And it was so hard for me to not have like, here is a list of exactly how you need to do this. Here is the mark scheme the examiner uses. Here is like all of these things that were going to tell me what, because I was like, if you're marking them out of 100 and I don't get 100, there's obviously things that you can do wrong. But they were very much like, oh, we just like feel an essay's mark. And I'm like, this is like, even I like to think it was just a theatre thing, but it was during my MA and during my BA as well, which was at like a legitimate university and not like a sort of half university, half conservatoire drama thing. They were still very like, I did this module I did in Harry Potter was actually from the education department, and the education department gave such better marks than the English department. It was like, oh, a first is something that's possible to get in our department. That's great. One time we awarded a 92 to someone, whereas English is like never awarded above a 75 in our department. So it's kind of like, this is such a difficult thing to learn when you come out of a school where it's possible during A levels and GCSEs, which are like our sort of standardized tests in the UK, to get 100% on stuff, because it's like, this is 100% of what we think you're capable of. Well done. Whereas when you get to university, you have to be like, no one ever gets 100 here. You are never going to be good enough for us. And you're like, oh, why?
That's horrible. I mean, that's when I came up thinking this is like a Hermione mindset of like wanting to get the best grades. But when I was going from high school to university, when in high school, it was pretty easy for me to just answer all the very discrete questions accurately and get 100%. I could get 100% on all sorts of exams and assignments. And I got to college, and all of a sudden, it seemed impossible for me to get 100% of anything correct. I could get like 90% of things correct, but I couldn't get 100% of things correct. And at my school, at Johns Hopkins University, the more difficult classes had curved grading structure. So whoever got the highest grade, they were essentially told, well, you don't really have 100%, but we're going to pretend that you have 100% and grade everybody else scaled down from that. And at first, I was resentful. I was like, why can't I just get 100%? Just teach me everything I need to know to give me 100%, and then we don't have to do the stupid curving of grades thing. But eventually I realized that that's just not how college works. They try to grade you based on some inarticulatable scale that the professors have on an individual basis. There's rarely any sort of consistency. There's no like board that says a professor has to grade this way for this type of class. There isn't anything like that. There's no academic board saying that you must do that, unlike for pre-university schooling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came to love the curded grade structure.
If any of you guys who are listening are about to go to university, especially if you do in the UK, like, my darlings, do not panic when you get your first essay back and you have like a 50, because that's like good for your first year. Especially if you, like, here's the thing, right? I was never really sure whether I would have preferred, so I did like a humanities subject, I did English, which was, it's very hard to it's almost impossible to fail. Unless you don't write an essay, it's like you won't have failed, but it's also nearly impossible to get a high mark. So like the highest I think I ever saw someone get was like 79. Whereas in like a science subject, it's perfectly possible to get 100%, but it's also perfectly possible to get 0%. So it's so easy to fail, but also just as like technically just as easy to get 100. Whereas like with the humanities subjects, it was a lot more English, especially I found, because I did a few different modules in different kind of schools. Very, very short range of data when you're talking about marking, which was kind of nice in some ways, but also frustrating because you would do essays and you will have no idea how you managed to get a better mark for an essay that you did like hungover one morning for an hour than one that you spent 3 weeks working on, and you'll be like, why is the drunk essay better? Who knows? No one will ever know.
Well, you're a lot more like Hemingway if you'd write it drunk. So
this is, well, I don't drink and I've never drunken, so that was always the thing that I was like, oh, maybe I'm missing out on, because there were some people who were like, I just have 1.5 glasses and then I'm at peak essay writing capability. I'm like, just ballsy enough to go for it, to really just make an argument and commit to it, but not drunk enough to not be able to spell. That was like the optimum drunkenness of essay writing for a lot of people that I knew.
Good grief. I know I don't drink either, so that's not something that I ever got to use as a skill supplement for my writing abilities. If it makes you feel any better, while it is true that at the like 100 level, 200 level classes of science and math, you can definitely get 100% to 0% in your grading structure, in your grades. Once you get into the higher level sciences and maths, like for example, I remember doing like a differential equation assignments that would be like 1.5 pages long, and if I didn't do it the right way, even if I got the right answer, if I didn't do it the right way, I would get marks off for that. So it got to the point where it felt as arbitrary of a grading system as you would feel for like a creative writing course.
Yeah.
At the higher levels, I think they kind of all get like that. I'm sure there's like discrete reasons for why I was marked badly, but I didn't feel like it. It felt arbitrary to me.
My most annoying thing from I had like a really, I do not begrudge her at all. I had an amazing tutor for my master's, but she was a harsh marker. And it was really frustrating because I knew that I was one of the best essay writers in the class, just simply because essays were like my life. And most other people had never, like they hadn't written one in 10 years. So I was like really into it. And she was so good, my tutor, at like pushing me to do it. She was better than any tutor I had at my BA, and she was technically like just someone doing her PhD. She wasn't a professor or anything. And so it was the one that I was totally fine with getting, not like kind of the same marks as everyone else, and these comments from her where she was like wanting to push it. But my masters, because they are ridiculous. So my dissertation for my masters had an essay component. My dissertation essay for my BA was 8,000 words. A normal master's dissertation essay in the UK would be like 15,000 words. And I was like totally up for that. I'm sorry, I have to pause there. I'm getting slightly emotional, Paul, because my essay for my master's was 2,500 words. Which is like, I don't know, like in my head, I'm like, that's a page of writing. Why is this happening to me? So we ended up having this like 2,500 word essay. I got my mark back from this woman, and she basically said, this is equivalent to research at the forefront of its field, but I can't give you a dissertation, a distinction for this essay, simply because it wasn't enough words for you to write a master's level dissertation. So I was like capped because of the word count, which neither of us could control. And I was like, I'm glad you think you could publish this, but maybe a good mark. So yeah, it was just honestly, you guys, like if you're someone who really cares about grades, if you're at school and you're going into university and you're like, just talk with someone who's been through the process recently and will be able to like quell your fears about the idea of wanting to get like the best marks every single time, because it's totally true that some of it is so arbitrary. Some of it, like different teachers will mark an essay totally differently in the same department, even at the same university, on the same module. It's like a really frustrating thing to get your head around. But once you do, it becomes a lot more pleasant to do university with that knowledge, from my experience at least.
It is hard. And of all the things that I've gone through in academia that prepared me for real life, it was that realization that, you know, I'd always held myself to the standard of I need to get somewhere between 90 and 100%. That's what I have to get because I am that kind of student. And then university just said, no, you're not. No, you're not. I got over it. It's okay. And in the chats, Bree May was astonished to find out that you don't have to meet all the job requirements to apply for a job. That is correct. You know, and that actually is conversely the worst thing that academia told me. The worst thing that academia taught me was that I'd have a record and that it mattered in some fashion. Like the idea that you have a record that matters in some fashion is horribly untrue in real life. You can apply for as many jobs as you want, get rejected from all of them, and you know who knows about that? Nobody. Nobody knows about that.
That is one of the most American things I've ever heard. There is like my favorite, like the most American phrase I can think of right now is that will go on your permanent record. No one else even says that. Like no other country is like, hey kids, this is gonna stay with you forever. That detention you got that one time, that employee is gonna fire you for that. Like that's such a weird, like that and red Solo cups are like now my that's how I see you guys. That's your new legacy again.
Yeah, permanent records, red Solo cups. That's pretty much America. But that's something that kind of restricted me when I was first looking for jobs. I was afraid that, well, if I apply for this job and I'm not 100% qualified for this job, what'll happen? Will they tell other employers about me and how I lie to get a job application? No. If they see you for an interview, then they'll base everything about their knowledge of you on that interview. they'll almost immediately forget everything on your job application once you get an interview. If your job application shouldn't be complete lies. I mean, if you don't know anything about computer programming and you say, I know computers, like that one female character on the IT crowd, then that's a bad way to do it. That actually will get you in trouble.
Yeah.
But as long as you are, approximately fitting the job requirements, and you can do as somebody in the comments just in the chat just said, as long as you can do the job, then you might as well apply. There's no downside to applying for any job that you want.
Yeah. I take the philosophy when I look at job descriptions, which always have a good at Excel or good Outlook skills. I'm like, I take the opinion of like, if I get this job, I'll have at least a weekend before I start the job. I can teach myself at Excel. That's something I can do because I'm really, really cheap and have the free Apple version of Microsoft like Office package.
Yeah.
So I have my version of Excel is called Numbers.
Yep.
Simply Numbers. And I have no idea what that can do. I amazed a 10-year-old who I was tutoring the other week by showing him that you can make a pie chart on the computer because they still have them doing it by hand. And I was like, this is the 21st century, kid. Like, welcome to the 21st century magic. And I think it was almost like I was Tony Stark and I was like doing this with the air. And he was like, oh, this is amazing. I was like, it's a pie chart. Yes.
That's brilliant.
Kind of how I felt. I went into a job interview for the Globe Theatre in London. Ooh. And I was being interviewed about a sort of marketing, sort of social media position. And I was like, I felt like I was teaching them a lot in my interview. Like I didn't get the job, but I basically taught them like the fact that if you have a Tumblr, a way of getting other people to see your Tumblr who you maybe think will be interested is to maybe follow some people or tag your posts. And they were like, do you think we should follow people? And I'm like, I think you should definitely follow some people.
You're a wizard, Rowan.
I know, I felt like a wizard. It was really scary because it was with the artistic director who has been replaced by a woman from the director from the Knee-High Theatre Company. I'm so excited about that. It's going to be awesome. But this guy basically was like a bit of a maverick. He became like artistic director of this quite major theatre in London when he was like 24. And he's ended up as artistic director of the Globe. But he was kind of like, so what do you suggest for our website? And I was like, this is kind of like free advice for you from this job interview. But I was kind of cheeky. I was like, well, first of all, I'd suggest that you fix your links on your website because currently your social media links do not link to any social media. And they were like, they all froze. And this girl in the back who was an assistant was like, fix social media page? Like, that's my job when I get out of this interview. Oops. But brilliant. Yeah, I was like, I'll give you so much good advice, guys. Why didn't you hire me?
Because you gave it all away for free. That's why.
Yeah, that's true. Too much. Just giving too much of my fun young person knowledge.
We are joined in the chats by Zainab. Hi, Zainab. And Taylor Brogan. Hi, Taylor.
Oh, hey, guys.
Oh, my gosh. I was laughing a lot. I realized I never answered the question myself about big life lessons.
Oh, yeah.
So my big life lesson is something that I learned not immediately, like in the recent past, but in the last couple of years, and that is not to that the police are fallible. My big life lesson is that the police are fallible, which is an extension of a previously learned lesson, which is that authority figures are fallible. I was very much that kid who was like the teacher's pet and who always followed the rules and never broke anything, and was like the goody two-shoes type person all the way through about halfway through high school. And then I started realizing that sometimes people who were my authority figures, who were placed in positions of authority above me, were just completely wrong. We're just completely wrong. And I kept on expanding on that belief throughout my life. But in the last couple of years, as I've been paying more attention to the news and the systemic racism and the violation of women that are done by authority figures, I've come to realize that it's not just a school thing. All authority figures are fallible and should be questioned. You should be questioning the powers above you. You don't necessarily have to fight them or disagree with them, but you should at least question everybody who is an authority figure, because what if they're completely wrong and or assholes?
Yes, agreed. Agreed with that. It's kind of crazy to me because it feels like from like tutoring these kids who aren't really that much younger than me, it feels like we have such a quick turnaround on like social memory. So my generation and like a few generations before me in the UK have a really big understanding of the fallibility of the police, for example, because of the Hillsborough disaster, which was very, very big deal in the UK. Essentially, there was a huge amount of people died at a football match, and they essentially realized that many of the reasons why so many people died was because of the bad handling of the situation by the police, and then there was a massive police cover-up because of it. And they've basically just like the trial has happened, the inquest happened. It was now found that the police were entirely at fault for like they lied about everything. It was a massive deal because it was like a lot of people died, a lot of kids died. It was like essentially like when people were exiting, it wasn't done properly, so part of the stands collapsed, and it was like a big drama. But like kids don't know about that. And it's crazy to me that this thing, which was like a huge deal and was like a major turning point in terms of how the British public trusted police, and why I think quite a few British people of that particular generation don't have any trouble believing the kind of institutionalized racism that happens with the police in America, because this was not even anything to do with racism. This was just the police being douchebags and like covering their own asses. And so it's like no jump for us to be like, oh yes, maybe they're covering their asses because they're huge racists. That to like a lot of British people of my age are like, that makes total sense because they already did it in the UK to just cover their asses for no hatred-filled reason, just because they're the worst. But so many kids just have no idea, and it's like so quickly that people forget this stuff, and that it becomes people think something that like no one hears about again. It's really, I find that really strange.
It is strange, and it's true. And I wonder if like this age of memes that we're going through right now is I'm not sure if that's resultant of that or if it is perpetuating that. Like, people still remember the blue and black / white and gold dress, but for how much longer? How long will that lesson stay with us?
Yeah, that's true. We it's really strange because I feel like some of this crosses over and some of it doesn't cross over in terms of stuff that's been big on the news. So do you, in the UK, U-Tree mean anything to you? And this sort of paedophilia ring from the 70s in the UK?
Wow.
Basically,
that doesn't mean anything to me.
TV's biggest and brightest stars of the 70s, TV stars of presenters, often of kids shows, have pretty much all been revealed to be in this paedophile ring.
Holy crap.
Okay. It's been a huge, Rolf Harris has been arrested, who was like, if you know of Rolf Harris, Australian guy, he was pretty much one of the most beloved entertainers. We had Jimmy Savile was the biggest one because he was on this show called Jim Will Fix It and was like just about,
I've heard of that.
Yeah, so basically just about like kids wrote in about stuff they wanted fixed or done, and then he kind of like fixed it for them. He is like, there's literally hundreds, possibly thousands of allegations against him. The whole thing is just unbelievable. But the thing that was crazy about it was that this was happening at the same time as the YouTube abuse stuff was coming to light. And it was just such an obvious idea of like this abuse of power that happens and how easily it happens, and how like the entirety of like the BBC higher ups were complicit in this, clearly, because there were allegations that were made against them and nothing ever came of it. And it wasn't until really recently that it's all come out, after many of them have already died, these guys who've been accused. So it's kind of like how nothing has changed. Like this stuff is allowed to go on, and then it happens again in a new medium, and it kind of, this abuse of power thing is so prevalent that whatever medium we seem to be entering into, it never feels like it's gone.
Yeah, I think that I know about Jimmy Savile not because I knew anything about the Jimmy's show, but because when the YouTuber abuse stuff was happening, I want to say like near the end of last year, another little outpouring of information happened. I think Paul Neefsey made that comparison. Yeah, another YouTuber. So that is horrifying. That is horrifying. And it's not as if the United States is free of that sort of phenomenon. I mean, we've got Woody Allen getting a show from Netflix, no, Amazon Prime. We got Woody Allen getting a show from Amazon Prime, despite the fact of his historically known interactions with underage folk.
Yep. I've just seen the trailer for his new film with Emma Stone. Wow, is that like a weird autobiographical projection, like tortured older academic seeks love affair with younger student?
To be fair, that is the plot of like 90% of his movies.
This is what's so fun. Like, this was my favorite. I can't remember who said this, but basically the idea of like, write what you know is terrible advice, but it's the reason why we have so many novels about English academics who want to sleep with their students.
I saw that on Tumblr.
I'm like, it's so funny because that was like so much of my course in my final year was post-war fiction, and it is all that. Like, that's all they flipping write about. And I was like, if I have to read another book with this exact same plot line, and it was so funny because so many of the people who were teaching me and tutoring me were like white male academics, and they were kind of like, oh, that is kind of a plot of all the books I've picked, isn't it? And I'm like, it is. Maybe we could do something else.
Yeah. Taylor Brogan clarifies, like Woody Allen marrying his adopted daughter. Yeah, that is really damn creepy.
That's that.
Oof. Weird from Pluto says that they like Woody Allen films, which is fine. I mean, you can like the Woody Allen films, but I don't support Woody Allen in any way, shape, or form because of what he's done. I actually never responded to a tweet we got from Francie, a second tweet, which was, challenge, invent a non-male superhero, backstory, superpowers, etc. Non-male superhero. Go, Rowan.
Right. I am a big fan of non-binary superheroes who have non-binary powers. This again will become apparent if I ever finish my work in progress novel. But yeah, people of non-binary gender who are able to like own the identity through not just through their gender, but through like the other stuff, like the superpowers that happen, especially because I'm a big fan of like sci-fi that uses allegories while not erasing diverse identities to do it. So not kind of saying, okay, we're having like an entire white male straight cast, but this is like a metaphor for queerness. And it's like, maybe have a queer character, which is like X-Men, like one of my biggest beefs with X-Men. I'm like, bless you, but no, stop it. But yeah, so that idea of like, and like very similarly, like it happens all the time, like Avatar as well, not the Last Airbender variety, but the Blue Pocahontas variety, where it was like, oh, look at this clear like metaphor for colonialism with all the white people invading the blue aliens planet who are played by people of color. And it's like, this is weird. Why are you doing this? So yeah, so I'm thinking we're going to have a non-binary character. Their superpowers are going to be... okay, right, because this would be awesome. Their superpowers are going to be being able to change their physical appearance, or change their body, change like everything about the way that they look and the way they present at like that at the drop of a hat. And their backstory is that I can't decide whether it would be better if they've always had this power or whether they develop this power as some kind of nuclear vat experiment situation, because it's that or bitten by an insect, but the insect thing tends to mean that you turn into that insect. And they are going to have an awesome, good time with that power. Nothing is ever going to go wrong. No, there should probably be a villain, but my villains tend to just be like straight white guys from the establishment. So there's a straight white guy from the establishment who's a douchebag and wants to ruin everything. Boom. Thank you. Thank you. The new graphic novel's coming out soon, guys. Order the first episode of the comic.
You didn't? Did you name your character? What's your character's name? Either their real name or their superhero name.
Ooh, I don't know the superhero name. The real name is going to be Sasha. I have no idea why. I was just like, that's a name that people have.
I'll take your word for it, just like I took the word for from Kingsman, the Secret Service, that Eggsy is somebody's name. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that seems, Sasha now no longer seems like a weird name. That's the funny thing about that film is I haven't seen it. I watched the trailer for it and it seemed like the worst thing in the world. But all I keep seeing on Tumblr, I have no idea, because it's not even from the same person that I follow. It's just from a handful of people that pops up. There is so much fan fiction of the Eggsy character and Colin Firth's character as a relationship. And I have no idea. The only context I know is the trailer, but I'm like, this seems like a dysfunctional relationship to me, if that's what we've come up with from this show, from this film.
That is remarkable. You know, when you're first describing your character, I thought, are you describing Miss Marvel? Because it sounds a little Miss Marvel.
I could be describing Miss Marvel, who I definitely know-ish about. She can change appearance. She
can change her body, basically. She has control over her body, and she can make it change in different shapes. She initially, when she discovered that she had a power, I think that she actually ended up like falling asleep, then waking up, and she looked like Captain Marvel, like Carol Danvers with the blonde hair, and so she originally appeared like that for like a hot minute, and then she just eschewed that and like owned herself as her own character. But because she can change her body, she can do things like make her arms grow out really big and like make her feet grow really big and all that sort of kind of like Mr. Fantastic from Fantastic Four.
Who is that? What's her civilian name? Do I know this character?
Kamala Khan.
Oh, I've seen a lot of meta to do with this, to do with how awesome it is that that's her power and that she chooses to stay within the like physical body and identity that she has.
Yeah.
So it's quite like a political, but like a powerful thing to be like, hey, I could technically look like any person that I wanted to, who has a lot of social power, but instead I choose to like stick with this particular identity that I have, which is like, yeah, very similar to the idea that I was thinking of, but in a similar way of like something empowering about having a superpower that allows you to like defy all gender binaries to the point where you are able to imagine how you feel today, and that becomes how you look today, if that makes sense, rather than kind of having this imposed, I mean, still obviously living in a world with an imposed gender binary, but not necessarily having that binary imposed on your body, if that makes sense.
I'll be honest, it doesn't entirely make sense to me, but that's not your fault. It's because I've been brainwashed into thinking about things in the gender binary. So I am consciously accepting of non-gender binary, but it is hard for me to think of things in the non-gender binary. I'm still working on it. I'm a work on progress on that one. So I would love to see your creation and learn from it.
Is that we've got the comic book happening, the graphic novels happening, there's TV shows happening, it's all happening on this. It's all getting going.
Well, we do have Taylor watching us. Maybe she can write us the pilot episodes for your show and your
done. Francie can be in it. This is how it's all coming together, all of our skill sets.
Francie can act all the parts, like Orphan Black's Taylor.
Yes.
Tatiana Maslany.
Yeah. Every shot will start from like a shot from behind, and it turns around, and surprise, it's Francie again. This is a new character, still her, different hair, same person.
That would be amazing. That would be fantastic. I have a hard time trying to think of what I would invent as a non-male superhero. Although I do like there's this the Big Hero 6 movie had did a variation on the comic book story for Gogo. I can't remember Gogo Tamago, I think was his last name. And she is tacitly like a Japanese American character or a Korean American character, hard to say for sure. And I like the fact that her superness was that she got this ability to be really, really fast, the way she always wanted to be in real life. She always wanted to get things done quickly. She always wanted to like be the fastest, do it right away, no waiting around for plans, all that stuff. So I like the way that formed out for her character. But there's I also kind of get bogged down in the idea of, should it be something that you are born with, aka I'm born that way, aka hard to avoid making that not an analogy for the queer life, or should it be something that is thrust upon you later on in life, like something that has happened to you, and then all of a sudden you change and you become super, which is like going through adolescence and all of a sudden discovering who you really are. There's those two analogies, those two analogous structures in superhero stories. I'm not sure which one I like better.
All I could think of when you said that was how thrust upon you would be Peter Parker's sex tape.
That's brilliant. Oh,
I'm clear. Like, this is the thing that I think of now, just because of in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that Jake Peralta's character does it all the time. To Santiago, it's just like the worst, like the most boring sex tape titles ever. But every time someone says something, before it always used to be like a "that's what she said" thing in my head, but now it's always like Tyler the sex tape.
It's brilliant. Emily Eaton wants to be a part of this somehow. Emily, you could be Francie's love interest. How about that? Boom.
Done. That's happening. Wasn't even a question. Like, queering up everyone. This is happening. What? This is like the weirdest thing ever, but because I've just realized how obvious it is, I should totally say this. If any of you guys are in London, check out a company called Panic Lab. They're a theatre company. They are doing a show called Riot. I think it only has like a couple more dates, like a random date at the end of this month, maybe. They're doing a show called Riot, which is like a queer superhero show on stage, which I did a bit of dramaturgy for them, and it's unbelievable. The performers are all like stunt physical people as well as actors. So they do like backflips off each other, and they do in one part of the show, as long as they haven't cut it, but I don't see why they would because it's amazing. That sort of like leap onto the shoulders, spin around, flip someone on the back, like a Black Widow move that she does in the hallway. During one of the Captain America movies, I think, where it's like, I run at you, I like climb up your body, I flip you over using my legs around your neck, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, she did it in Winter Soldier.
It's badass. So basically, it's like a show. There's a lot of commentary on like the superhero narrative and like the idea of like how superheroes were used as propaganda and like all this kind of stuff. And it's really like got a twisted narrative. It's called Riot with Panic Lab. There's a really great scene where the comic book nerd who narrates, who begins as the narrator, names these different characters, and they named the female character at one point. He named her Mind Games, because she could like control, or she could read minds, and she like, the actor as the character like stops him and is like, you can't call a female superhero Mind Games. What is And so he's like, okay, well, what do you want to be called? And she's like, I think she's called Dice or something, or like something else that's like one. And it was just such a like great, that's like the kind of script it is, that it's like talking a lot of, being very self-referential about those kind of ideas.
That is topical to Age of Ultron. You could actually have that line of dialogue in Age of Ultron aimed towards Scarlet Witch.
Boom. So if anyone's in London and fancies it, like have a Google. It's really good. It's by a guy called Joseph. Like Joseph Mercier is a performer in it, but he was also the choreographer. Him and a guy called Lenny, who's in it, did the Rites of Spring, which is like quite an infamous ballet piece. But when it was performed, it was like, because it was doing such like sensual or extreme things with dance, that people were apparently fainting in the aisles and everything was crazy. And people have tried to do it since with that piece of music, to do a dance which had the same feel to it. And I don't think anyone's ever done it, except they did it last year, I think, or 2 years ago, where they pretty much just both learned as many different kinds of hand-to-hand combat as possible and then beat the shit out of each other for the entire music. It was unbelievable. Like, there's a mini documentary about it, and they come off and they have properly like swollen eyes, they can't see, and there's like blood everywhere. But it's this like very like weirdly homoerotic, because they're very, he's got like North Star tattoo on his arm, like it's a very and it was like kind of visceral and real, and like something where you could imagine people having to leave because they were so uncomfortable with it. Like, it's a really interesting thing. So yeah, if anyone's in London, it's worth going to have a look.
That sounds amazing. At first I thought you were talking about them doing all the stunts, but that the injuries that they incurred were fake injuries, like stage makeup injuries.
Oh no, they were
actually physically. Oh wow.
They like physically went for it, and like by the end of the piece, because it's so long, they were obviously like trying to beat each other up, but just like this is so difficult.
You know, actually, if you like that, you might like Daredevil, because a lot of the fighting in Daredevil is like that. Although they really do stage makeup and sun makeup, but it looks like that.
I have to check it out.
I think, you know, something that's always been interesting to me is the concept of honesty versus lying. Not like truth, reality type thing, but like honesty about what you really think, what you really feel, and lying, deceiving other people. So I think that if I had if I were going to do a non-male superhero character, it would be something. It'd be a character who is probably similar to the Jean Grey psychic character from the X-Men, but literally all she can do is when people are around her, without her consciously doing it, when people are around her, they can't help but express themselves honestly. Like their actions, their words, anything that they try to do has to be an honest one. So like if they want to steal something and they're around her, they have to announce, "Oh, you're not paying attention to me, but I'm taking this thing." Then all of a sudden everybody knows. If someone is trying to attack someone who is a queer person, then when they're trying to attack that queer person, if they are in fact repressing their own homosexuality and fear about that, they have to say that instead. They are forced to reveal themselves because of that.
That feels like a power that would be in Misfits.
It would be a Misfits-like power, I think. I agree with that.
Like it's a very because that shows very much like I think we talked about earlier the idea of like, here's my personality and this is the power that develops because this is my personality from something. So in a very similar, it would be someone who didn't like the people who lied or who always lied. There would be some kind of like tripping up thing where it kind of got you that you could always hear the truth. It always kind of interests me because I don't think I've never seen it actually explored within actual canon media, but I feel like it's the kind of thing fan fiction is interested in exploring. The power dynamic of someone who can read your thoughts in any way. So like the Teen Wolf fandom, I don't think I've never really seen a fan fiction or something that's gone into it, but the idea that when you're a werewolf, you can sense through heartbeat and stuff, like you're a lie detector, you know when someone's lying. And I think
which, by the way, is another power of Daredevil, but FYI.
But I just think that's really interesting, like the power imbalance between someone who can like tell if you're lying or someone who can read your mind, like for friendships as well as like romantic relationships and all that kind of stuff, is like something I've never really seen explored properly. Like a lot of stuff like that, which is like, hey, here's a power that makes us like different from other humans, but we don't necessarily explore how that actually plays out in reality. That's the kind of thing I'm more interested in. So like what they did in Torchwood that they didn't do in Doctor Who was like explore, okay, how does it affect Jack that he can't die? Like how does it affect his relationships with people that he loves, that he knows that they'll all grow old and die and that he will still be alive for like pretty much until the end of time. And like Torchwood, bless it, went downhill towards the end, but everything that fandom produced and everything from the show like really was driving towards like a very honest kind of portrayal of something extraordinary in a believable way, which I kind of really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I also like the fact that they didn't rush it. You know, the Jackie Anto thing was obviously going to happen, but it took a little while, and then once it happened, there was like a comfort there, and then in a very Joss Whedon-esque way, that comfort was ripped away from you, and you were just miserable by it.
Yep.
So good.
Like the funny thing is, there's like a piece of fan fiction that will forever be my favorite piece of fan fiction of all time, which was all the things that I hate about certain fan fictions in one fan fiction, but it was genius. And it's written by a woman who, it turns out now, I'm pretty sure it will never get finished because she actually writes professionally now. But it was in the future, everyone else is dead. It's only Jack. It was like a continuation of like a whole other universe that she did, which was all crossovers, but with crossovers with things that you would like CSI Miami, or like, no, it was the original CSI, and it was Sarah and the main guy in it, who were like in a relationship, and they came over, and like if you don't think about it, you're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But then you're like, actually, all of these shows about like procedurals and government agencies are the most likely to cross over with Torchwood, because it's like, hey, we need someone who's like good at pathology. Can you come in? So like, it turned out that Ducky and from NCIS and Jack were like old war buddies together, and like everything was just so genius. It was so well put together, and I was like, how is this a thing? And so this spin-off that she did of her own fan fiction was like, in the future, Jack's the only one who's still alive. He's in some like the terrible bit of the human universe, which is kind of implied to exist in the sort of the 51st century, where, or like the 25th, 6th century, or whatever it is, where everyone lives in space. The kind of great and bountiful human empire, like very much a dictatorship. It's almost like Firefly-esque. And he has this crew that come together, and there's one of the people on his crew is like a weirdly, possibly reincarnated version of Yanto. And it's him having to like reconcile the fact that this is like a different person who looks different, who acts different, but there are certain things that cross over. And then similarly, this character has to reconcile the fact that he's dreamt of Jack his whole life. He's dreamt of this person, and he realizes that he's met them, and neither of them want it to be like oh, the fates have brought us together kind of thing. Like, they want to be very honest with each other. And it's all these things that I'm like, that seems like the lamest thing in the world. And then I read it and I'm like, this is beautiful, continue forever. But I know it's not going to, because I realized in my head the next chapter that was going to come out was going to be that the Doctor arrived. And I realized that when she was writing it, I think Tennant was still the Doctor. And then I remember thinking like, oh, Matt Smith is now the Doctor. She might have to change it to Matt Smith. And it's like never been finished, but it was just such a glorious, like ridiculous fan fiction that I can't believe that I ever read it. And I'm like so glad that I did.
That's amazing. I'm going to say that her professional work was when she published 50 Shades of Jack. So.
Yes. Hey, that is technically like erotica is her publishing thing of choice, but much better than 50 Shades.
It would be hard to be worse.
This is what's funny, right? Because I've like was a very loyal fan of her fan fiction. Me and my friends were really like we used to read it when we were at high school. Like, we absolutely adored it. And so she sent me as a gift like a free copy of her first published novel, and was like, this is totally a thing that I've done through like fan fiction and getting that kind of encouragement. Thank you very much. Here's a free copy. And I was like, you. Internet friendships.
Internet friendships are great. Let's see here. We also got a question. We got a question from Jesse, I think, about scrolling is not working. Okay. Rats. I think I've lost the comment. Where is it? Where is it? Can you see Jesse's question? It was about separating the art from the artist.
I can see nothing. Yeah, my comments are possibly slightly frozen.
Mine too. I'm gonna refresh that other page and see what happens.
Uh-oh. We'll see.
Let's see here. We're getting into the end of this. We're getting to the last 12 minutes of the time that I had allotted.
Oh my gosh, guys. Let's make it a good 12 minutes. Oh, there we go. I think I've got them back. Internet friendships, yes. Yes, Zainab.
Good. Mine is still loading. Can you see the, what's this called? The chat, the question from Jesse?
Let's scroll up and see if I can see the question from Jesse.
Emily asked if we could tweet the link info about that show, and I see that Zainab on Twitter has. It is the Panic Lab Riot, RIOT, at londondance.com. There's a link there on Twitter.
Yes, that is the thing I was talking about. If you guys are interested, have a look at that. I'll retweet it.
I found it. Jesse Springer asked, I'd be really interested to hear your guys' opinion on enjoying someone's art versus approving of someone's actions/personality. Like, do you think it's possible to differentiate in any meaningful way?
I think like as someone who studied English literature, it kind of has to be, because otherwise we would just discount most of the writing of everyone. Because
everybody throughout history has been horrible?
Pretty much. Like there's so many people who have done really awful things who have produced really awesome stuff. And I think like the difficulty is now, like, I think that not the difficulty, but the difference is maybe because if we consume their stuff now when they're alive, we're allowing them to profit from that, which is a different thing to like seeing someone in history who was a douchebag and like understanding that they were like a douchebag, and then looking at their stuff from almost like a historic point of view, as a point in history, which of a point in like the literary canon or in the history of art or film or whatever it might be, and acknowledging that as almost like a historical artifact versus consuming things and giving money and giving like fueling the creative process of someone who is like currently doing terrible things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with you. And also on top of that, I fear that if you support a contemporary piece of art from a contemporary living artist who is themselves perpetuating of harmful concepts in society, that you are tacitly approving that harmful action on society. So, for example, you know, Orson Scott Card's, what's this called? Ender's Game. Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game.
Yes.
When I was a teen, I read that and I loved it, and it was like it expanded my horizons about what I could do as a person in this world, and what loyalty and love meant, and all sorts of different things. And then as an adult, in the last few years, I discovered that Orson Scott Card is actively trying to destroy the lives of queer people. So fuck you, Orson Scott Card. I am not going to support anything that you ever publish or are attached to ever again. Am I going to go back and say I don't like Ender's Game? No, I did like that story, but I'm not going to tell other people to read it. I'm not going to tell people. I'm not going to go pay for the movie. I'm not going to pay for the DVD or encourage anybody else to do that, because that funds his ability to be hateful. Not into it. But you're right. If somebody is long gone and can no longer affect society, then it's okay to get into their art and, you know, appreciate it for what it is. And even there, though, I mean, if you're going to be appreciating art, it's important to appreciate art with a critical view to it. You know, realize that the art has context. Realize that the art, although you cannot really speak for an artist's intention, you can examine their intention. Why did they create this? Why was this important piece of art for them to make in the context of where and when they were creating it? And if you do that, then you'll uncover things. Like, there isn't any gay romance in Ender's Game. That is on purpose.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm a big fan of like the new historicist approach to criticism, the idea of looking at context being hugely important, of the author and of the time that it was set in, but not kind of I find it really difficult to enjoy a lot of writing that's written before there's like a widespread understanding of equality or of diversity being important, all this kind of stuff, just simply because I understand it as like a stepping stone in a huge puzzle of like the white man narrative being dominant throughout history, because of that like one brick piece that fits into it. So the idea of like, not only does white, like the Western canon and how it's excluded so many different people, it still affects what's published today. Like, it still affects what is being produced, because these are the things that we deem as like classics that are meant to be heralded, no matter how much, if we saw the lives of these people now, we'd be like, this person is hugely racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever it might be. And there's all these kind of ideas about, oh, we should have like a women's canon, or a canon that includes these other different things. But the truth is, even if we go back and insert it, because they weren't inserted earlier, the canons moved on. Like, although they existed, they didn't affect the canon in any way, because they weren't already there. They weren't already being studied. They weren't already being respected when this was happening. So the people who were creating immediately afterwards took no notice of them, because they didn't know it was there. All they knew that was there was these classics from kind of most often middle-class white guys, kind of again and again throughout history. And so it's kind of an interesting one for me, just because so many of the people that you study almost like has like an apology for them that's very much like, oh, they're just of their time. That's just like how it was at the time. And we're kind of encouraged, I think, sometimes when studying literature, to ignore the problematic stuff that happens in this stuff that we're seeing produced by artists or by writers, just because it's the thing that was done at the time. And then when we come to modern day, people are still almost making excuses in a similar way of just being like, oh, it's just that generation, or oh, it doesn't really reflect in the art, or it's nothing to do with the art. And I think it kind of is like, it's really hard to separate those things out from each other.
It's definitely hard to separate them out from each other. And, you know, certainly something being a product of its time is applied both to works of fiction and historical events and people who are alive right now. Our grandparents are a product of their time, and that is somehow used as an excuse to allow them to be horribly racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or any of the other number of people that people can be problematic. And I think that approach to both people and works of art is a half-hearted approach. Like, if you're going to say that something that Orson Welles wrote was problematic and a product of its time, that's great, but say why it's bad despite being a product of its time. Like, the fact that it's a product of its time is the reason why that's a part of the canon, but it doesn't excuse its validity. It doesn't say, and thus it is okay. It's just, that's why it's here. We can also talk about why it's still not okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I feel like we have very similar opinions about this.
I think we do. One great example of a way in which a company fought that is Warner Brothers Movie Studios has released some of its old cartoons from the turn of the century when they were just first making short cartoon serials. And at the beginning of the DVD, there'll be a little screen that flashes up and says, the attitudes and ideas that are in this story are racist and problematic in some other fashion, and we do not support them. They are not okay now. They were not okay back then, but we are including them just for historical context. Like, that disclaimer is huge. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Especially because I think Disney are just kind of pretending Song of the South doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the one thing that's not on DVD from Disney. They're just like, tra-la-la-la-la-la-la. Although it still had Peter Pan in its entirety, which is, you know, not exactly the least racist thing out there.
Peter Pan is really flippin' racist. I am astonished by it. Yikes.
Here as well. All up in there.
So yeah, I think that our opinions about art and its separation or non-separation from artists are pretty similar. I don't know. I actually have a huge box full of fantasy books written by Piers Anthony, and when I was a kid, I was a big Piers Anthony fan. I liked all of his Xanth series, his juxtaposition series, whatever that's called. And I enjoyed them because they're magical and they have puns, and they kind of took some concepts that I already knew about in fantasy and turned them on their head a little bit. But rereading them as an adult now, they are just full of racism and sex shaming and gender conformity, and it's bad. It's bad. It's bad to the point where I want to get rid of the books, but I have this. At my core, I am opposed to destroying books, so I don't want to hurt them, but I don't know what to do with them. I don't want to keep them. I don't want to give them to somebody because they might learn something bad from the book. And then I think maybe it was Corolla T on Twitter suggested that what I should do is I should annotate them, pointing out what's bad about the books before I get rid of them. So that if somebody does pick them up, they'll say, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then the woman did this because she's a woman. And it'll be like this crossed out thing. And I'll say, Paul says that's bullshit. Women don't have to do that. Men can do that instead. Fuck you, Piers Anthony. Enjoy this book. Have a nice time reading it.
Written by Piers Anthony, angry annotations by Paul.
Angry annotations by Paul. Okay, if I'm going to retire from my current job, that'll be my new job. Angry annotations by Paul.
That's your new career path right there.
It could be.
Just coming up with like new jobs all the time.
Well, that is an aspect of the modern day, is that you can come up with new jobs all the time. You can come up with a brand new career that has never existed and just say that it is what you do, and then make it be what you do.
Now it's what I do. Give me money for the thing that I'm doing. Give me money for sitting on my floor by my bookshelf talking to people on the internet, guys. Come on, someone's got to monetize this. Let's do it. Let's make some money, guys. Let's
As recently as when you were born, it was not possible to be a creator of a web series. As recently as when you were in high school, it was difficult to be a creator of a web series. Now that can be a career.
The world, guys, it's moving so fast. It's growing up so fast. So many things are changing. The royal couple have another baby. The fun news that a woman has given birth to a child.
Oh, I'm not going to go into too much depth about how I am aggravated there still is a royal family in the UK, because what the hell, it's 2015. But
we're mainly in it for the money.
The money that never goes to anybody besides the royal family.
It's just like pumped into the economy.
Because people come over to take photos of them?
Oh, like, yeah, like unbelievable amount. Like they are the biggest tourist draw still. Buckingham Palace.
All right, so if the royal family is there just to be a tourist attraction, that would be fine. But that doesn't explain why there's so many outpourings of affection and tearful joy at things like royals getting married, getting pregnant, having babies. What?
This is what's so crazy, right? It like happened at the right time, because before that they got together, people were over it. They were like, Diana's dead. We don't care anymore. Like, she was the one. She was like the people's princess.
The candle
she was
in the wind.
royal. And then it just came right at the right time when the economic depression was happening. And suddenly it's like, oh, we can be slightly excited about these people that we all like vaguely know about. And then that's it, like, because it's kind of obviously the more you get like modernized, the more it becomes like a non-mysterious thing from like hundreds of years ago when you've never even seen the king, or like, so you know, let alone a portrait of them, or you've never seen them at all, where like a king might come to a city and once in your lifetime and it would be the one chance to see them. Whereas now there's like scandals. There's an abuse scandal that also involves the royal family going on, in case you were unaware of that. But yeah, so there's like so much stuff that's kind of can very easily come out about them, whether it's, you know, Prince Harry wearing a Nazi uniform to a fancy dress party or whatever else it might be going into. So it kind of, it's, yeah, very much breaking down any kind of myth of it being some kind of symbol of anything for Britain, and much more being like, pretty much the only, most people who I know who argue for not like scrapping them, it's a money reason. It's like, hey, they bring a lot of money, a lot of tourists to the UK and a lot to the economy, like billions every year, just because people are so into visiting their random houses. And if they weren't in the random houses, maybe people wouldn't be so interested in taking pictures of them.
I mean, that is certainly a valid thing. The money aspect, the shoring up of the economy of the UK, that is, I mean, I get it. We've got Graceland, we've got Mount Rushmore. I can't really fault you for hanging on to that. That is fine. Weirdo Flu Pluto asks, if you're not from the Commonwealth, why does it bother you so much? It bothers me because I question authority. That's why it bothers me. Royalty is default authority that you're not supposed to question. So for that reason alone, I question their existence constantly. If I didn't vote for them, I question their presence as an authority figure, even a nominal one. It's not good. I mean, it encourages the retention of the class system, of saying that people from one part of the UK are better than people from another part of the UK. That's wrapped up in the royal family. That's not good for progress. It's not.
The class system in the UK, bless it, is it's a big thing. It's like a very, the class system. It's such a big part of British, like the British history, such a huge part, like up until very, very recently, up until like the decline of the industries, and even now. But it's interesting because working class has been replaced with, that attitude towards working class people has been replaced with attitude to people who are unemployed, essentially. Which is like almost like the new working class. It's kind of like a weird one. But yeah, like to the effect of like more than any other country that I know of, our class system is quite very much tied in with like privilege in that kind of way, to which other places I think it's not necessarily so much a class thing as it is like a socioeconomic thing that doesn't have those kind of like centuries old rigidity of particular classes in the same kind of way. Although in one of these programs where they went and tried the food from other eras, I found out that in the Victorian era, a middle-class man who was the only earner in the family, who had 2 children, would have a cook, butler, maybe another servant. His job, his day job, was addressing envelopes. That was the job that you had to be middle class in Victorian England, was to address envelopes, because you had to have the level of education to be able to sit there with a really nice penmanship and just address and stuff envelopes, which is now done by machine. The world is crazy, Paul. What's happening?
That is crazy. Wow.
Like, unbelievable.
It doesn't actually add anything to this conversation, but as we started talking about the royals, I immediately remembered that in one of Terry Pratchett's books, he talks about Sam Vimes being just actively disliking the royals of any place. And he's discussed with the fact that many of the people around him, many of his friends and family, love royals. And he says it's weird how everybody's brain seems to have a crown-shaped hole in it that needs to be filled. And that, I mean, obviously Terry Pratchett is British, so he is speaking from his experience. I think that's weird. It's interesting.
I feel like you would appreciate, Paul, because I know you're a big Terry Pratchett fan. Durham University has a Terry Pratchett, they're like a sort of like weirdly official Terry Pratchett theatre company is the student company there, which is like one of the nicest companies because it is so like open. It's like everyone who auditions gets a part. They do like the world premiere of most of the theatre shows of most of his books have been written and done by students at my old university. And he used to come to all the performances. Terry Pratchett used to come to all the performances and like watch the shows. And they did like Guards last year. And I'm trying to think of like the other ones. And it was amazing. They're so good. And every year, like this person who has the most talented art person I've ever seen does like a massive mural downstairs in like the backstage area, and everyone like signs it. He's been in the cast, but it's like brilliant. It's like such an amazing thing, and all of the proceeds went to his charity, and it was like this tradition that they've like kept up like year after year. That's like our like Terry Pratchett legacy from my university. Sure, my
lovely.
And it's so sweet. It's like such a kind of, when you think about Terry Pratchett, it like the way that they like did everything, the way that they came together, like what they did it for, the ethos behind it was like so in line with what he kind of stood for. It was such a nice thing that's like still going on now as well, that they're obviously doing their first one this year after he's passed, which I think is going to be like a massively emotional thing when they're...
I'm sure that it will. Do you know which production they're doing?
No, I'm not sure this year actually, because this is like weirdly it feels really strange because it's like the first year that no one I know's at university anymore. Everyone's gone, apart from those few people who have been there for like 15 years and they're still there and they'll never leave, and you're like, you don't really count. You're like always going to be there. You're like the furniture now.
Nice, great attitude. We have passed the 2-hour mark. This has been delightful.
This has been lovely. Google Hangouts. Thanks for being in the comments, everyone. Yeah,
thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful. Matt Palka showed up late to the game, but has been contributing. Yeah,
I was just going to say, Palka's turned up. Where were you, my man?
Everybody Palka. I wish there were a way that I could go in here and I could just copy out the chat and save it somewhere into like a text field. I could put it up as a Tumblr post or something.
Oh my god, yes.
There was a lot of good conversation in there that we didn't get a chance to address.
I'm trying to like highlight it. It won't let me. Oh, I can highlight it. I think you can. You could probably copy and paste it in some way.
I might try to do that. I'm gonna give that a shot. But is there anything you wanted to say in the last couple minutes?
Not really. We've covered a lot, guys. In conclusion, we've talked about sex tapes. We've talked about not trusting authority.
Superheroes.
Talk about superheroes. We've talked about our fringes that will never be again. It's been a rough ride. It's been a lovely live stream.
Lots of TV shows.
Yeah, lots of TV show talk, which is like, clearly I need to find a career which involves that. Just like having a chat about TV shows. We'll see what we can do about that. If anyone has a job spare, which involves me just talking about TV shows, talk to me after the program, guys. I'll be out the back. We can have a chat. Yeah, no, I think that's nice summing up. Anything you would like to end with?
I will point out that I am having another live stream next Saturday. We haven't figured out the time yet, but it's going to be with my friend B. Some of you may know her if you went to VidCon. B was part of the Chelsea, Tyler, Vince, Sabina group of people who are hanging out at VidCon. She doesn't have she doesn't have much of a YouTube channel at the moment, but so she's going to be my first co-host who does not have a significant YouTube presence yet. That should be interesting. So, come back next week for that. I am still a little bit punchy from having just finished Veda. So if I've not been as awake today, I apologize. I tried to be really awake, but yeah, Veda took a lot out of me.
Congratulations, though. Congratulations to everyone who did Veda. Like, I understand that I was stopped by like being in quarantine, but I was like, even if I hadn't been in quarantine, I don't know if I'd have made it. You guys are like champions.
Yours are great though. Every time I see that one thumbnail from the one where you're doing your fashion show, where just like you going, it's fantastic. It's my favorite thumbnail. That was really good. So come back next week for my live show with B, and I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm gonna try to eat some food and probably pass out. Oh, I've been really bad about making these into podcasts. I haven't put up the last two live shows as podcasts, basically because I was so busy trying to do stuff for Veda. But now that is over and I don't have to put up a vlog tomorrow, I'm gonna work on making the podcast instead. So there'll be 3 podcasts, including this one, that go up probably tomorrow or the next day. So watch out for that. I think that is it. If you're not subscribed to Rowan, there will be a link to Rowan's channel in the doobly-doo. So please subscribe to Rowan. I think that's it.
Ding.
Do you have a regular sign-off? You don't really have a regular sign-off, do you?
It's just like, blah, 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 bye.
Well done. Blah, 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 bye. Indeed. I'm going with the... thanks for watching all the way to the end of this vlog, or listening to all the way to the end of this podcast if you're listening to it. And tomorrow will be even better. Aha. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And stop.